SLT Mobitel, the connection. SLT Mobitel, the connection.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, don't be mistaken, as daily cases drop to 500s. Health officials remind the public that the vaccine is not a cure.
The main protection given by the current vaccines is protecting the people from death and complications.
Every man for himself. An anti-poverty advocacy group report reveals the callous hoarding of 1.2 billion vaccine doses by wealthy countries. Expert advice. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa appoints a committee to study and recommend the next steps on the Easter Commission report. A touch of class. Sri Lankan bowling great Chaminda Vaas appointed fast bowling coach for the West Indies tour. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Friday the 19th of February 2021.
ඇල්කොහොල් අඩංගු hand sanitizer භාවිත කරන්න. ලෙඩ රෝග ඇති කරන විෂ බීජවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරන්න. හඳුන්වා දීමේ මිල රුපියල් 350යි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanai. Now, health authorities yet again stress that the COVID-19 jab presently being administered is not intended to prevent infection, but to reduce the ill effects of the virus. Speaking to media today, Deputy Director General of Health Services, Dr. Hemantha Herath, reminded the people the paramount importance of adhering to health and safety guidelines, even after immunization. Meanwhile, a nasal vaccine developed in Finland has shown success in eliminating the novel coronavirus in tests carried out on rats. It is reported that human trials will begin later this year.
The daily COVID-19 infections reported from Sri Lanka dipped to 514 yesterday. The last time the island reported daily COVID-19 cases within the 500 range was back on the 12th of January. Since then, the average daily coronavirus infections have been around 700. Topping the daily list of infections once again, the Colombo district reported 105 cases of the virus. 68 infections were reported from the Gampa and Kandy districts, while 51 cases each were reported from the districts of Kalutara and Ratnapura. The Matale district accounted for 25 of yesterday's infections, and the Ampara district reported 24. In addition, 15 other districts confirmed a further 109 infections. The remaining 13 cases were identified as Sri Lankan expatriates. Meanwhile, so far today, 506 new coronavirus infections have been reported. Addressing media today, Deputy Director General of Health Services, Dr. Hemantha Herath, said that over 233,000 persons have been vaccinated in the island.
Yesterday itself, we have immunized approximately 23,067 persons, and altogether we have immunized 233,472 persons according to the available data. And we know that this process will continue in the coming days as well, especially focusing on the Western Province and the frontline staff of different organizations who are dealing directly with public and having a high risk of getting infected as well as transmitting the disease to the others. So therefore, these immunization programs are carried out in these places, including the Colombo Airport, Colombo Harbour, and several other high-risk areas where the clusters have been reported frequently.
Dr. Herath also stressed that the jab is not intended to prevent the virus from entering the body, but rather to prevent fatalities and to limit patients from developing life-threatening conditions.
I need to emphasize that the development of immunity takes time, and most of the time the first level of immunity will be developed around 4 weeks after the first dose, but the maximum expected immunity will be developed a few weeks after the second dose is given, and until such time the risk of getting infected and getting complications will not reduce. And therefore, it is very important everybody who has got the vaccination, especially the first dose and even after the second dose, need to adhere to the health guidelines that we have stipulated, and thereby firstly preventing people getting infected and also preventing spreading the infection by already infected people. We have got reports saying that some people have got the disease, which is normal because according to the available information also, the main protection given by the current vaccines is protecting the people from death and complications, and therefore until sizable population of is immunized in the country, the transmission will be continuing. So that is why we always emphasize everybody to adhere to the health guidance and make sure that you are not getting infected and you are not spreading the infection to others.
The Deputy Director General of Health Services added that a total of 750,000 people will be vaccinated during the first round of vaccinations, while noting that the said number is susceptible to change depending on vaccine availability.
We are also planning to purchase approximately 1 million doses very soon, and we have already received 500,000 doses, and probably depending on the circumstances there will be more vaccines purchased depending on the availability of such vaccines, and we are expecting 264,000 doses of vaccines through the COVAX facility, and we are at least during the first round a minimum of 750,000 people would be immunized at this round, but depending on the availability of vaccines, these numbers will be increased, and we will continue the vaccination program as and when the new stocks of vaccines are arriving in Sri Lanka through different sources.
In the meantime, 8 COVID-19 related fatalities were reported from the country yesterday, taking the overall figure to 430. Though 8 deaths were confirmed yesterday, only 1 death had actually occurred on the day. The remaining fatalities had taken place on the 16th and 17th of this month, as well as on the 20th and 22nd of last month. 5 out of the 8 victims were men, while the youngest victim was a 20-year-old. Meanwhile, with 743 persons being given the clear to return to their daily lives, the country's overall number of COVID-19 recoveries rose to 72,566 today. This puts Sri Lanka's active number of COVID-19 cases at 6,178. In another development, a Finnish nasal vaccine developed against the coronavirus has proven effective on rodents, and tests on humans will start later this summer. According to experts, the aim of the Finnish-developed vaccine is to add a permanent stop to the coronavirus at an early stage so that the vaccinated person doesn't fall ill and doesn't infect others. If the vaccine proves successful, this would eliminate the risk of the virus mutating in vaccinated people. The perks of the needle-free Finnish vaccine include storage at refrigerator temperature, being inexpensive to produce and requiring only 1 dose per person. However, its method of delivery implies less control over dosage, while its efficacy remains to be seen.
Pay just 500,000 rupees to reserve your unit today. Mulberry Residence.
Now then, an advocacy group has found that rich countries are on course to have over 1 billion more doses of COVID-19 vaccines than they actually need, leaving poorer nations scrambling for leftover supplies. This was published in a report today by the One campaign, which consists of a group of anti-poverty campaigners. The analysis conducted by the advocacy group, The One Campaign, looks at G20 countries and the EU and count procured doses of the 5 leading vaccines, Pfizer-BioNTech, Moderna, Oxford-AstraZeneca, Janssen and Novavax, that have been proven safe and effective in clinical trials and have obtained regulatory approval or are expected to obtain regulatory approval in the first half of 2021. In their parameters, the group also assumes that countries able to donate will maintain sufficient doses to vaccinate 100% of their populations and donate only excess supply. This conservative approach, they say, finds that 5 countries, namely Australia, Canada, Japan, UK and the US, plus the EU bloc of 27 countries, could share over 1 billion doses of leading COVID-19 vaccines with other countries and still retain enough supply to inoculate their entire populations. The report finds that though Australia has a population of just over 25.3 million, the country has purchased just under 115 million vaccine doses, which is an excess of around 64 million. Canada, meanwhile, has purchased 190 million doses, despite the country having a population of just 37.5 million. In the case of Japan, it has ordered excess doses over 37.4 million, while the United Kingdom has ordered 113.3 million doses than required. The numbers quoted for the United States, meanwhile, are staggering. Though its population is 328.2 million, the number of vaccine doses the country has ordered is a whopping 1.1 billion. It means the superpower is hoarding close to 500 million excess doses of vaccine. In the meantime, the European Union, according to the report, is stockpiling almost 464.9 million doses. Though the bloc's population is 447.5 million, it has collectively purchased 1.3 billion doses. What it all means is that Australia, Canada, Japan, UK, the US and the EU alone have the capacity to share over 1.2 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses with poorer nations. The analysis found that along with other COVID vaccine supplies procured by the global COVAX vaccine sharing plan and in bilateral deals, the excess rich country doses would go a long way in protecting vulnerable people in poorer countries. This, the advocacy group says, would significantly reduce the risk of deaths from COVID-19, as well as limiting the chances of new virus variants emerging and accelerating an end to the pandemic. The World Health Organization yesterday urged nations with vaccines not to share them unilaterally, but to donate them to the global COVAX scheme to ensure fairness. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has appointed a committee to study the report of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, which probes the Easter Sunday terror attacks, and the report of the Sectoral Oversight Committee on National Security. The committee is tasked with extensively studying the facts and recommendations of the two reports and to provide recommendations on how to proceed. The six-member committee, chaired by Minister Chamal Rajapaksa, also includes Ministers Johnston Fernando, Udaya Gammanpila, Ramesh Patirana, Prasanna Ranatunga and Rohita Abegunawardena. Presidential Secretariat Director General Legal has been appointed as the secretary to the committee. The committee has been instructed to submit its report before the 15th of March this year. Meanwhile, President Gotabaya has assured his intervention as the country's leader to preserve harmony among political parties while guiding the country forward. This was revealed by Minister of Industries Vimal Weerawansa following a meeting with the head of state this evening. The meeting saw the representation of 10 political parties which opposed the government's recent plans for the East Container Terminal.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa granted an audience with 10 parties representing the government in Parliament who recently came together to oppose the government's proposal to allow an Indian company to enter into a private-public partnership with the government in developing the East Container Terminal at the Colombo port. This comes in the wake of a recent controversial media comment made by Minister of Industries Vimal Weerawansa, who suggested changes to the leadership of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, calling for President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to be the party's chairman. The comments resulted in severe criticism by members of the governing alliance. The discussion between President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the 10 parties took place at the Presidential Secretariat this evening.
එතුමාගේ කැමැත්ත පළ කළා. ආණ්ඩුවක් හැටියට රටක් හැටියට මේ ඉදිරි ගමන යාම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය කරන සමගි සම්පන්නව ඉදිරියට යන්න ඕන කරන නායකත්ව මැදිහත් වීම එතුමා දෙන බවත් ඒ වගේම අපේ පක්ෂත් එක්ක මේ සාකච්ඡාව දිගටම පවත්වාගෙන යන බවත් එතුමා අවධාරණය කළා. ඔබතුමාගේ ස්ථාවරයේ තාම මේ විදියමද වෙනසක් වෙලා තියෙනවද? නිසක වශයෙන්ම අපි මේ පිළිබඳ කරුණුත් එතුමාට මේ අවස්ථාවේදී ඉදිරිපත් කළා. ඔබතුමාට පොදුජන පෙරමුණේ මන්ත්‍රීලා වට කරගෙන ගහන එක ගැනද? අනේ නේටට වැදගත් දේවල් කතා. මොකද බොහොම වැදගත් කාරණා. ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ පාර්ශ්වයෙන් නියෝජනය කරමින් කවුද සම්බන්ධ වුණේ අද? ජනාධිපතිතුමා පමණයි. ඔබතුමාලට සුළු පක්ෂ ලෙස ඔබතුමාලට සැලකීමක් නැති සහ කෙනෙහිලිකම් කරන හින්දාද දැන් ජනාධිපතිතුමාත් එක්ක එකට ගමනක් යන්න ඔබතුමාලා තීරණය කරලා තියෙන්නේ? නෑ කෙනෙහිලිකම් නෙමෙයි. යම් අඩුපාඩු දුර්වලතා සිද්ධ වෙනවා. අවශේෂ පක්ෂ කුඩා පක්ෂ කියලා සුළු පක්ෂ කියලා සලකන්න බෑ. මේ රටේ කවදාවත් පත් වුණ ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් හැමදාම පක්ෂක නායකයෙක්. වර්තමාන ජනාධිපතිතුමා තමයි පක්ෂක නායකයෙක් නොවන ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් විදිහට ඉතින් එතුමා අදත් ප්‍රකාශ කරේ එතුමා ගෙනාවු ප්‍රතිපත්ති ටික ඉදිරියට ගෙන යන්න එතුමා කටයුතු කරනවා කියන කාරණේ. ඒ එන දේශපාලන අර්බුදවලදී අපි සියලු දෙනාම එකට කටයුතු කළ යුත්තේ කොහොමද කියන කාරණේ මෙතන සාකච්ඡා කළේ.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa paid homage to the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic in Kandy today. During his visit, he also called on the prelates of the Malwatta and Askira chapters.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa engaged in religious observances at the temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic in Kandy this morning. He then called at the Malvatta temple and had an audience with Chief Prelate of the Malvatta chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuwa Sri Sumangala Thera. The Premier then called on Deputy Chief Prelates of the Malvatta chapter, Most Venerable Dimbul Kumbure Vimala Dhamma Thera and Most Venerable Niyangoda Vijitasiri Thera. Prime Minister then called on Chief Prelate of the Askiriya chapter, Most Venerable Varakagoda Sri Gnanaratana Thera at the Askiriya temple. Later, he called at the Askiriya Gedige temple and had an audience with Deputy Chief Prelate of the Askiriya chapter, Most Venerable Vendarube Upali Thera.
Upon invitation by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, his Pakistani counterpart Imran Khan is scheduled to undertake a two-day official visit to Sri Lanka on the 23rd of February 2021. Now, during the visit, Prime Minister Imran Khan will attend bilateral meetings with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, and the two countries are set to sign several memorandums of understanding. In his maiden official visit this year outside Pakistan, the Pakistani Prime Minister will be accompanied by a delegation including his Minister of Foreign Affairs and a group of high-powered businessmen and investors in Pakistan. Now, Samagi Janabalawege parliamentarian Dr. Kavinda Jayawardena today accused the government of lacking a clear strategy to face the looming session of the United Nations Human Rights Council. The UN Human Rights Chief's report strongly criticized Sri Lanka's conduct since the recent change of government and urged member nations to refer Sri Lanka to the International Criminal Court. It is also reported that the country could face another resolution at the UNHRC. The SJP MP, however, is confident that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa will guide Sri Lanka out of any trouble, saying that the head of state has experience in facing atrocities. He adds that the government's stance on the whole affair is also unclear, though the present government has withdrawn from the co-sponsorship of the Resolution 30/1, which was entered into during the previous regime.
This government absolutely have no strategy how to face the Geneva Human Rights Commission, which is yet to come. This government withdrew the co-sponsorship of 30/1 resolution. As a result, we don't understand what is the stance of the government. The whole country is facing issue where we might lose our GSP plus and so many other things. During 2015 government, we established the Transparency Accountability, especially Rights to Information Act, Missing Persons Office, and we were able to prosecute certain people who had allegations on human rights violations. Yet this government has not done anything progressive in terms of human rights violations, and there is no progress of following up with the LLRC Commission. There is a serious fear factor that has been raising up on the concern of supporting countries who have been with us, pro-Sri Lankan countries. In case if they are not going to support us in the Geneva Human Rights Commission, it's going to be a serious issue. So I personally think that the government should take initiatives to create awareness among most of the countries, the good things that the government has done, and strategize how the government and the country is going to face this human rights commission. I think His Excellency the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he has experienced how to face such atrocities and such issues. So I have a positive feeling that he will guide our country in terms of facing these serious allegations that has been made by certain countries against Sri Lanka and human rights violations, where we strongly deny that Sri Lankan military has been accused of.
Now, taking a look at other local stories, Manusat Derana partnered with the Sri Jayawardenepura Hospital's National Organ Transplant Program today, which was organised in line with the National Organ Donors Day.
The National Organ Transplantation Program was launched this morning under the patronage of Secretary to the Ministry of Health, Major General Sanjeeva Munasinghe. The registration of organ donors began and the database of organ donors was also launched. Accordingly, the registration card for organ transplantation was first handed over to the Secretary to the Ministry of Health, Major General Sanjeeva Munasinghe. If you would also like to contribute to this noble cause, you can download the application by visiting www.AdaDerana.lk or visiting the Organ Donor Day SL website on Facebook. Accordingly, the application form can be sent to the Organ Day SL webpage on Facebook or the email address otusjgh@gmail.com. To obtain further information, contact 077 03 44 344.
We will see you shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, stocks gained 0.8% today for the third day in a row, while the SPI gained 61.58 points to close at 7,797.94. Meanwhile, the S&P SL index of more liquid stocks gained 0.39% to close at 3,098.12. Now, here's Achyutan Srirangan to give you a brief report on today's market performance.
The Bros continued the bullish sentiment for recording the third consecutive day and surge amidst a 3 billion plus turnover. And market experienced a rapid spike followed by the plunge during the early hours of trading, and thereafter market witnessed a bumpy uptrend and rest of the session and closed at 7,798, gaining 62 points. And food and beverage sector took over the lead for the turnover close, followed by the capital goods sector and making a joint contribution of 44%. And parcel trade in the Sampath Bank account 4% of the turnover. And market experienced a low foreign participation dominated by the selling side, resulting in net foreign outflow.
In the meantime, the Sri Lankan rupee closed strong at 195 rupees to 195 rupees and 75 cents to the US dollar, after closing at 196 rupees and 50 cents to 197 rupees to the dollar yesterday. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Former Sri Lanka fast bowler Chaminda Vaas has been appointed as the fast bowling coach of the national squad for the upcoming tour of the West Indies. Vaas is one of the most successful left-arm seamers, Sri Lanka has ever produced. The appointment comes after David Secker stepped down as Sri Lanka's fast bowling coach yesterday, citing personal reasons days before the West Indies tour. Vaas has previously coached the Sri Lankan outfit on 3 occasions in 2013, 2015 and temporarily in 2017. The national squad is scheduled to leave for the West Indies on the 23rd and will play 3 T20s, 3 ODIs and 2 Test matches, with the T20 series opener set for the 4th of March. The tour was postponed earlier after Sri Lanka head coach Mickey Arthur and batsman Lahiru Thirimana tested positive for COVID-19. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.